What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction, coming at you with some more Supergirl. Surprise, surprise. This is The Daring Adventures of New Supergirl, also known as Supergirl Volume 2. The first volume of Supergirl came in 1972, I believe, or maybe it was 74, somewhere in there. And it lasted 10 issues after she was in a featured as backup stories in another magazine for a long time before that. So I assume they'll end up collecting that eventually in Supergirl Bronze Age omnibus form. Maybe this will be in there too. Who knows? But this lasted for 23 issues. It's a 2-volume series, and this is the first volume of the first 12 issues. And that's it. It's by Paul Kupperberg and Carmine Infantino, and I really love Carmine Infantino's art. It is classic comics. This is just absolutely beautiful work, and it's nice to read all the way around. Paul Kupperberg has a propensity to bog down in what I like to call ordinary or extraordinary people doing ordinary things. And so you get like Supergirl eating dinner, Supergirl doing the laundry, and like he'll have like 2 or 3 pages of that every issue, and with a lot of dialogue. As she's sitting there, like he has to fill it with her thought bubbles, because it's just not a very interesting thing. So it is a little slow paced in some parts, but it is also a pretty decent story. Now these issues featured like mostly 15, 16 page stories of Supergirl, and there were backup stories of other characters. Like the covers mentioned, Lois Lane has her own stories in here. Now, the volume does not contain those other characters, so even though it's labeled The Daring Adventures of Supergirl like it's a complete thing, it only has the primary Supergirl adventures, which is a bummer. I would have liked to have read those also. But she is Linda Danvers here, and she is, or maybe Kara Danvers. Does she go by Linda? I don't remember. There's too many Danvers in these universes. What does she call herself? Look at the art, though. Oh my gosh, very enjoyable. She goes out on a plane here. Yep, it's Linda Danvers. Okay, cool. So Kara Zor-El, Linda Danvers. There she goes. That's her secret identity, and she wears a wig, a brown wig, to help hide her identity, I guess, in hopes that people won't notice. But we get a little bit of her background in this one as she's riding on a train. She's about to go to college, and we have a development of this Psy lady who is there. We get introduced to this cast of characters. This is going to be her roommate. It ends up. This is her landlord. There's a couple other friends who kind of live there, including a guy who is a little cheesy and over the top in the way that he comes on to her. But it's okay. Fun stuff. The characters, you can tell who they are. They have their own quirks, and they're fun comic relief. Did a very good job on that front. So this lady's called Psy. Just Psy. A lot of the names that Paul Kupperberg came up with for his villains were not the most inspired, but it is what it is, and she's trying to stop degeneracy, I guess, on behalf of somebody else, and that just gets bigger in the next issue. Look at this beautiful art. Cool. I love the Bronze Age art style and all that. I think they really dialed in the look and feel of cool comics at this point. But this is all the talking scenes. Like I said, there's just a ton of it, and see how much dialogue there is on here. As she progresses, it's just more introductions to roommates, and she's just tired because she's Supergirl in addition to all of this. And there wasn't a ton that happened during this issue. Psy goes back, and she decides to rebel against her master, who turns into a sludge monster. But yeah, they don't call it degeneracy, they call it decay. So they want to stop decay. And this ends up a 3-issue serial, where she ends up fighting decay, and then the other girl helps out on this one. At least this issue had a lot of action to it, so it was a little better. Short stories. You notice I'm plowing through these issues because there's no backup features, as I mentioned before. But Carmine Infantino does all of the art, so it's extremely consistent, which I love reading a volume that has full consistent art and writing. It's kind of nice on that front. And they come up with the new characters called The Gang here. And the gang is working for some mysterious bad guy, which we find out Kara's roommate gets hooked up in that a little bit. And again, just like the slow-paced stuff. Her parents come into town. Parents, because they're adopted. They know she's Supergirl. And because these are only 16-page issues and we wasted a few pages on doing ordinary things, it bleeds over into a couple more issues. So she keeps fighting them. Nice art again. And eventually takes them down, and that kind of leads into the next issue. So there's this like conspiracy going on. They're like called the Council or something like that. And this volume really doesn't elaborate into what they are, but the person who was in charge of the gang and getting them to do their things actually gets killed in this. And the one girl called Brains escapes in a James Bond-like fashion in a boat. And Kara follows her and finds out that there's this like robot coming out of the water, and ends up having to fight this robot and kick its butt. And that leads to an undersea lab, another nice comic trope. So, of course it does. I love undersea labs. I think it's a lot of fun. So this is a very fun section of the book. I really enjoyed this. She fights the robot again in the undersea lab, who's being controlled by that lady. And then she goes to a jazz festival. And kind of silly. But, of course, her black roommates invite her to a jazz festival. Kind of interesting there, but okay. Very stereotypical. What can you do? And Doom Patrol comes and is in these. Now, Kuppenberg wrote Doom Patrol for a long time also. And so I think he was trying to highlight his two characters and just kind of combine them at this point. And they fight some radiation villain who, this gets pretty interesting at this point. Supergirl deals with him. Again, these bleed over because they're very short comics, and she throws him into the atmosphere, and she almost dies dealing with it. And you get this very weird cover at this point for this next book, where there's a mad scientist dealing with things. But we'll find out about that in a sec. She falls to ground. She's having a lot of problems. This is very enjoyable, and seeing her lose her powers and almost die is a very good good dramatic storytelling right here. So I enjoy how this has built up over these issues, even though, again, he just litters these panels with dialogue that a lot of it isn't really necessary for the plot lines. But this guy is the bad professor. He's working for that conspiracy group, and they end up sending out the robot to capture Supergirl. They've got her captured, and he dunks her in this vat, which makes like a bunch of miniature clones of her. Very bizarre. Then the miniature clones are all like controlled by his control panel, so they don't have their own lives or anything like that. I love this. This is classic pulpy, silly stuff, which makes me happy to read. And so that happens. We get a mysterious bad guy who's controlling everything, and he's like, "Don't fail in kidnapping her." Some of the panels get a little wonky here because you see this like weird perspective shot, and like her face looks flat. Same with this. There's a weird wonky perspective that really like the artist didn't do a great job of, but for the most part, again, like the figures look pretty nice. So there you go. She ends up going to the Fortress of Solitude and is followed by her weird clone bots. Fun pulpy stuff again. And they eventually drag her to an incinerator. I mean, all this random stuff is in here, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But I don't mind that. I wish comics would be a little less serious and a little more mini clones dragging people into incinerators. I think that's super fun. And so she goes into the incinerator, and for some reason it just eats that radiation poisoning that she's had that's suffered her powers out of her. So she comes back. We get a weird like subplot for her landlord where literal Nazis are showing up, of course. And they do the Supergirl thing. So she beats everybody up, and there's a subplot plot where I can talk. The bad guy of this ends up dead, and he's killed by the mysterious villain, and the PD shows up and sees her dead, or him dead with her there, Now, on the drama end, they really should have accused her of murder or whatever to make it a big deal that she had to prove her innocence, but they didn't go that far. And, you know, there is some drama elements where I feel like they could have just ratcheted it up to the next level. But the cop just is like, we're watching you, young lady. And that's how it ends. So we'll find out how the next one goes. I presume there is, you know, this whole mystery villain will come to a head at some point, and we'll enjoy that. And it says the next one goes into full book length, so maybe they end the backup features at this point. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. We'll see, because there's a volume 2, and so that means that will probably be my reading soon as I get up to Crisis. So those who have been following along probably know that I've been reading a lot of Supergirl stuff lately. I kind of did Matrix's origin for the next one, the next Supergirl after Crisis, and read a bunch of the Peter David work for that also. And now I'm kind of going back and taking a look at Kara before Crisis, and probably leading into Crisis shortly. So if you want to follow along, I'm probably going to end up reading Crisis on Infinite Earths pretty shortly. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I will be back soon with some reviews. This is good stuff. I recommend it, and I'd call this probably just a 7 out of 10. There could have been a little more done on the writing side, I think, to push the drama a little bit more, and the pacing was a little bit slow, but it's still an enjoyable read. I like the art style, even though some of the panels didn't quite work out all the way around. It worked fine for the storytelling, so it's an average book, but fun. All right, guys. I will see you soon.